Paul Williams' spiritual journey is one of deep reflection, critical thinking, and an open heart. Born in the peaceful suburbs of Essex, a region to the east of London, Paul grew up in a Christian household. However, religion was not a strong part of his upbringing. As a young man, Williams identified as an atheist. He didn't believe in God or any religious teachings, and for a while, he thought this was where his faith journey would end.
I was born in Essex, a county east of London, some years ago. I grew up in a nominally Christian home. I was an atheist in my late teens.
But life had other plans for him. In his early 20s, a powerful and life-changing experience sparked a new path of religious exploration. One Sunday morning after spending the night at a party, Williams was cycling home. He happened to pass by a beautiful church in Islington, and something about it caught his attention. Curiosity pulled him inside, and what happened next would forever change his view on life.
I remember one morning, Sunday morning, I was cycling back from an all-night party in London, where I lived, and I saw a beautiful church in Islington, not far from here, and I decided just to go in because I was just curious.
As he stepped into the church, Williams recalls feeling a powerful force, one that he interpreted as pure love, surrounding him. The experience was so overwhelming that he had to leave before it overcame him emotionally.
And I just sat at the back, and suddenly I felt this powerful force, which I experienced as love very, very strongly coming towards me. And I didn't want this. It was kind of almost, no thank you. And I knew if I stayed for long, I would break down. It was just so powerful. So I literally left. I didn't identify it with Jesus or anything. It was just, wow. And so I went back the following week, of course, hoping for a repeat experience, but nothing happened. But I decided that this was a spiritual experience, and it set me on the journey to faith and spiritual life.
This moment was enough to convince him to reconsider his atheism and explore faith more deeply. Soon after, Williams embraced Christianity, joining evangelical churches and becoming a devout believer in the teachings of the Bible. He accepted Jesus as divine and followed the Christian concept of the Trinity.
So I became a Christian, and I went to church, evangelical. I went to church all the time and believed Jesus was God. I believed in the Trinity and the Incarnation, and read the Bible very carefully.
For years, Williams lived his life as a devoted Christian. However, as he continued his studies in Christian theology and philosophy, things began to change.
I studied theology, Christian theology at university, and I studied philosophy as well at university as a Christian.
While studying at university, he started to notice issues with some of the core beliefs of Christianity. The more he studied, the more questions arose, especially regarding Christian teachings about Jesus.
There were problems I noticed when I started to read the Bible.
One of the most significant realizations for Williams was that, according to his research, Jesus didn't actually preach many of the doctrines that modern Christianity is built on. Jesus didn't preach Christianity, Williams noted.
It seems to me that Jesus didn't preach Christianity.
He didn't come to start a church. What he preached was the oneness of God, or what Muslims call Tawheed. He was also strongly against hypocrisy.
He didn't come to found a church. For example, none of the Gospels, apart from one, speak of Jesus talking about a church at all. The earliest Gospels don't have Jesus speaking of a church at all. And he doesn't preach Christianity. What he preaches is God, he preaches Tawheed, and he's against hypocrisy.
Williams discovered that concepts like the Trinity and Jesus being God didn't exist in the earliest writings about Jesus. These ideas, he learned, were developed centuries later. For example, the idea of Jesus being both man and God is mostly found in the Gospel of John, the last Gospel to be written, and not in the earlier Gospels.
He didn't preach the Incarnation. He didn't preach the Trinity. He didn't preach the Atonement, according to the vast majority of historians. The problem for Christianity is the idea that God became a man in Jesus. This is a late idea. It's not there in Jesus' ministry. It's only found actually in the Gospel of John. This is the last Gospel to be written. In the earlier Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Mark's the earliest, there's no incarnation at all, and that's the least historical Gospel of all, and that's the Gospel of John. Only in one place in the Gospels does Jesus walk around saying, I am the light of the world, or before Abraham was, I am, or I am the resurrection of the life, or I am the light of the world. All these I am statements are only found in one gospel, the last gospel of John.
Faced with these contradictions, Williams began looking for answers outside of Christianity.
Bad news is the Gospel of John is used by Christians more than any other gospel to preach. For example, the American evangelist.
Even though he had certain biases against Islam, especially due to the events of 9/11, he decided to explore it himself.
As a Christian, I was becoming quite Islamophobic after 9/11, the fears about Muslims and so on. And I decided, though, that I would find out for myself the truth about Islam by actually talking to Muslims.
Williams walked into Regent's Park Mosque in London, where he met Muslims and started reading the Quran in English. What he found surprised him.
So I didn't know any Muslims. So I walked into my local mosque, Regent's Park Mosque, and spoke to Muslims there. I read the Quran in English, and I discovered real Islam. And that suddenly surprised me because it opened up a truer way of understanding the concept of God than I had as a Christian.
The more he read about Islam, the more he realized that it provided answers to the questions that had troubled him as a Christian.
And I didn't realize there was another option. I didn't realize that Islam also held Jesus and his mother in high esteem. And a whole chapter of the Quran is named after Miriam, or Mary in English.
He learned that Muslims believed Jesus was a prophet of God, not the founder of the Catholic Church or a figure meant to be worshipped. In fact, Williams found striking similarities between modern scholarly research on Jesus and what Islam says about him. He noted, there's a remarkable agreement between what the Quran says about Jesus and what the latest Western scholars are discovering.
But there are also other answers to problems about who was Jesus. Who was Jesus according to Western scholars? He thought he was a prophet. Okay, well that's what the Quran teaches. What else? He thought he was the Messiah. The Quran teaches that. He did not think he was God. The Quran teaches that. He did not teach the Trinity. He did not teach the Incarnation. He did not found a church, actually, according to historians. And Muslims don't believe he founded the Catholic Church. So there's incredible convergence between the latest Western scholarship is saying about Jesus and what the Quran is also saying about Jesus. And I think that's a miracle of the Quran, which is often not spoken of. We talk about the miracles of the Quran. Of course, there are many. This is all, for me, this is another one.
But what truly captured Williams' heart was the life and teachings of Prophet Muhammad. He found that Muhammad's message shared many similarities with Jesus' teachings in the Gospels.
And if you look at his seerah, his life, which is well authenticated, this is not myth. We know he really existed, a most extraordinary human being. About this man, the teaching there, it felt very familiar to what I read in the Gospels. In Luke, for example, or in Matthew. There's a lot of true stuff in the Gospels still, I think.
What moved him the most was an incident from Prophet Muhammad's life. When Muhammad conquered the city of Mecca, instead of punishing his enemies, he forgave them. This act of mercy, when he had the power to take revenge, left a deep impact on Williams. It demonstrated to him the character of Prophet Muhammad as a true spiritual leader.
So when I saw the teaching of Muhammad, peace be upon him, I recognized the hallmarks of an authentic spiritual teacher. One thing that really impressed me, amongst many things, was the day that he and his companions and the Ummah rode into Mecca when they finally claimed Mecca back and they conquered Mecca, and the way he treated his enemies. Many people in the West would have very negative views of Islam. They think, oh well, I'm sure Muhammad slaughtered his enemies or something. How did he treat these nasty people? He forgave them. He showed them mercy. And this was the example the Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, explicitly referred to when he conquered Mecca from the pagans. From a position of power, total power, he could have destroyed them and he didn't. He showed them mercy. This says something about the character of the Prophet, and I just wish the West knew about that. The Muslim world knows about it, but the West doesn't, and it is infinitely the poorer for not knowing that.
Today, Paul Williams is a Muslim, and he shares his thoughts on religion through his content on blogging theology. His discussions focus on the Abrahamic faiths, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, viewed from an academic perspective. He believes that Islam offers a complete way of life, not just spiritually, but also for the mind and body, as well as for society as a whole.
At the moment, I produce content on blogging theology, which is looking at the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, from a more scholarly academic perspective.
Williams also points out an important trend in the UK and Europe. While Christianity is in decline, especially among the youth, Islam is growing.
Religion in Britain is declining, and it has been on very steep decline for a number of decades now, and the trajectory is to continue the decline. But the one religion that isn't declining in Britain is Islam. And someone told me who knows from Germany, because I thought, wow, isn't England amazing? You know, oh no, it's like that in Germany, it's like that in other places as well. In Europe, Muslims are not losing their faith, but the younger ones are holding on to it, and that's good for the future.
He believes this is because Islam offers a sense of purpose and community that is hard to find in today's materialistic world.
You know, what does Islam offer? Well, a chance to have connection and relationship with our Creator, and that we have a purpose in being here. We're not here just to acquire material goods. We're very materialistic in Britain and in America, but we're not focused really on what really matters.
For those interested in learning more about Islam, Williams recommends avoiding random internet searches and instead suggests reading credible sources. He highlights Misquoting Muhammad by Jonathan Brown as a great starting point to understand Islamic history and theology.
I don't recommend you use Google because you may get some good results, you're going to get a lot of bad results as well. And how are you going to know what's a good result and a bad result if you don't know about the subject? So what I do recommend, however, because I like books, this particular book, there are many books I could recommend, but this one's good, by Jonathan Brown, called Misquoting Muhammad, The Challenge and Choices of Interpreting the Prophet's Legacy. And this is an excellent introduction to the whole subject of Islam, the Quran, is it authentic, the history of the life of the Prophet, hadiths, how we interpret the Quran, the four schools, you name it, is all in here.
In his final message, Paul Williams offers a thought-provoking idea for Christians. If you read the Gospels carefully, Jesus never says he's God. He preaches about God. In Islam, we agree with Jesus on this. So, if you want to find the real Jesus, you will find him in Islam.
I'll say that Jesus, if you look at the Gospels, did not say he was God. He preaches God. In the Gospels, God is someone other than Jesus. Jesus himself says in the Gospels, a man comes to Jesus and says to him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus says, according to Mark, "Why do you call me good? There is no one good but God alone." That's in the earliest gospel. Jesus denied he was God. He pointed to God. Islam is with Jesus on this. So come back to the original Jesus. You will find him in Islam. You will not find him in what you call Christianity.
Paul Williams' journey from Christianity to Islam shows us the power of questioning, exploring, and keeping an open mind. His story reminds us that the search for truth requires us to look beyond our assumptions, even if it leads us to unexpected places.
Subhanallah.